In this video, we will show you options for finding case law online. Case law helps you support the arguments you are making in an appellate brief or other legal document. Case law is a term that refers to the written decisions judges make in individual cases. Usually the case law that you can research comes from the appellate courts. In Minnesota, this means that case law is typically an opinion from either the Minnesota Court of Appeals or the Minnesota Supreme Court. An opinion is the written decision of the judge with an explanation of why they made that decision. There are two types of opinions in Minnesota: precedential and non-precedential. Until 2020, these categories were called published and unpublished, and you might still see them referred to that way. A precedential or published opinion is one that creates law judges have to follow in other cases, in addition to resolving the dispute in that particular case. Minnesota Supreme Court opinions are precedential. Court of Appeals opinions can be precedential if the panel of judges decides the opinion should be, based on factors like whether the opinion establishes a new rule of law, clarifies existing case law, or resolves significant or recurring legal issues. For a list of all the factors the court will consider, you can take a look at Minnesota Rule of Civil Appellate Procedure 136.01. Precedential or published opinions can be cited in an appellate brief or other legal document. On the other hand, a non-precedential or unpublished opinion is an opinion that only resolves the issues in the case at hand. It is not intended to create a rule that judges have to follow in future cases, and you generally don't cite to a non-precedential or unpublished opinion in an appellate brief or other legal document, especially if there is a precedential or published opinion available. A non-precedential or unpublished opinion is not binding on a judge in other cases, but it might still be persuasive. They can still be useful for understanding the judge's reasoning and for finding cases and statutes on a legal issue. Most opinions issued by the Minnesota Court of Appeals are non-precedential. There are several ways to search for case law online for free. We will look at two options: the Minnesota State Law Library's Opinions Archive and Google Scholar. The State Law Library's Opinions Archive contains appellate opinions issued by the Minnesota Court of Appeals and Minnesota Supreme Court since May 1996. The archive contains precedential and non-precedential opinions. The easiest way to get to the archive is from the library's homepage, pictured here. Under Quick Links, choose Opinions. This will open the search page for the Opinions Archive. There are several ways to use our Opinions Archive to find case law. You can start by doing a keyword search. For example, if you were looking for cases about wage theft, you can type "wage theft" in quotation marks into the search box, then press the Enter key on your keyboard or click on the search button. You will then see a list of results below that includes excerpts from the opinion. If you see a case you would like to read, click on the link. You may end up with a large number of results. The results are sorted by relevance, so the most relevant results will appear at the top. You won't necessarily have to review hundreds of results to find helpful cases. If you are looking for cases interpreting a statute or court rule, you can search the Opinions Archive for the statute or rule by number. For example, if your case involves the statute on modification of child support, Minnesota Statute 518A.39, you can type in 518A.39 into the keyword search box, then press the Enter key or click on the search button. Coming up with search terms can take some trial and error. You may need to try different combinations of words or use synonyms to find what you are looking for. You can also use the options on the right side of the search box to limit your results by a date range or by the type of opinion. You can also try constructing a more complex search. Here are some advanced tips to consider. If you want to search for a phrase, put the phrase inside quotation marks. For example, type quotation mark, search warrant, quotation mark, instead of just search warrant. If you want to search for multiple variations on a word's spelling, use an asterisk to substitute letters. For example, you could type LIAB asterisk to search liable, liability, and so on. To search multiple terms in one search, use connectors like and, or, and not. You will need to type these words in all capital letters for the search to recognize them as connectors. For example, if you wanted to search for cases about unemployment eligibility where someone quit because they were at risk of serious illness, you might construct a search like 268.095 and quit and serious illness in quotation marks. You can find these search tips and more by clicking on the Help tab. Google Scholar is another option for searching case law. Google Scholar looks similar to the regular Google search engine, but there are some differences you should be aware of. First, to search for cases using Google Scholar, you need to select Case Law from below the search bar. Once you do that, you can then select the courts you want to search. Your browser may automatically detect that you are in Minnesota and give you the options for federal courts or Minnesota courts. You can also always select the courts you want to search by clicking on Select Courts. Google Scholar's archive has case law for all 50 states going back to 1950, federal courts going back to 1923, and all U.S. Supreme Court decisions. Use the checkboxes to select the courts you want to search. Generally, if your case is in state court, you should rely on state court cases from that state, rather than cases from other states or cases from federal court. If you are writing an appellate brief for the Minnesota Court of Appeals or Minnesota Supreme Court, you should check the box next to Minnesota, then click on Done. You can now search just like you would for a regular Google search. You can enter keywords. For example, if you were looking for cases about traffic stops, you can type in traffic stops and press the Enter key or click on the magnifying glass button. Once you run a search, you will be able to filter your results by date using the options on the left side of the screen. You can also construct more complicated searches. For example, if you wanted to search for cases about establishing child custody, you could try a search like establish and child custody in quotation marks. You can also search for cases interpreting a statute or court rule in Google Scholar. For example, if you are interested in cases about proper service under Minnesota Rule of Civil Procedure 4, you could type in Civil Procedure Rule 4 or the citation Min R Civ P 4, then press the Enter key or click on the magnifying glass. If you find a case you would like to read, click on the title to see the entire opinion. Once in the opinion, you can use the House Cited option to find more cases talking about similar issues. You may find it difficult to locate a case that has the exact fact pattern and argument you are looking for. Remember that when you are searching a database like the Opinions Archive or Google Scholar, you are only searching trial court cases that were appealed. Most trial court cases are never appealed. Even though there is a lot of case law out there, there is not a case that matches every fact pattern. You may find it helpful to search for cases that reach the result you are hoping to achieve. For example, you could add the term granted or denied to your search terms related to child support modification, or add words like illegal or valid to a search about traffic stops. Writing a legal document can be complicated. If you are working on an appellate brief, you may want to watch our video, Informal Appellate Briefs. You can also visit our Appeals Subject Guide, which has a page on appellate briefs. These resources are linked in the video description below. If you have questions about searching for case law, you can contact our Ask a Librarian service for help by email at askalibrarian@courts.state.mn.us or by phone at 651-297-7651. Thank you for watching and happy researching!